I have the privilege today to speak with one of the original Tuskegee Airmen, George Hardy, and as you know, as part of history of this country and the difference in the things that they have done for us, it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you, Mr. Hardy. And won't you give me a little bit of history about yourself and where you're from and how did you end up going into the service?
I went into service. I took the examination for aviation cadet in March of 1943 at the age of 17. I was a high school graduate, so I was able to take it. I passed, and they sent me home until I turned 18. And then I went to Tuskegee in September 1943, college training detachment for 3 months. Then in December of 43, I went to the aviation cadet program and graduated in September 1944 as a second lieutenant, flying fighters. So, and then in February 1945, we went overseas, and I flew with the 99th Fighter Squadron, 332nd Fighter Group over Europe. I flew 21 combat missions over there.
Now, for us that's listening to you, and you speaking the military terms, that is part of the Tuskegee Airmen.
That is part of Tuskegee Airmen. The 332nd Fighter Group, that was the Red Tails.
Okay. Now, question from the outside, how did you become part of that?
I became part of that. I graduated from high school in June of 1942. At the age, I turned 17 that same month. And I had a year to go, and during that year I decided I wanted to fly an airplane. I'd never driven an automobile, but I wanted to fly an airplane. And so when the time came, I took it. And I applied. I wanted to go to Tuskegee because they had gotten their first class graduated in 42, see? And we got a lot of information from them to the Philadelphia Tribune, black newspapers, and so we're ready to go and become part of that. So.
Okay, now my question to you is, you go into your training, you learn how to fly the plane. Take us back through that whole experience of the very first time you went into combat, and tell us what that was like when it actually happened.
First time in combat? Well, geez, that's a long time ago. But first time in combat, I was a second lieutenant and new to the group, and so I flew as a wingman on a more experienced pilot. And you follow that wingman all around to protect him when if he's attacking another airplane, you stay behind him to make sure no one gets on his tail to shoot him down. And so I got my missions were as a wingman in World War II.
Well, so. No. But what I mean by the question is, what was that like as far as the adrenaline, the mindset? It's like, oh, this is real. This is what I've been training for. You know, I actually could die. This is the real deal. What was going through your mind in that first experience, the very first time?
Well, you know, you talk about what's going through the mind. I didn't have those conflicts. I just had to concentrate on staying on his wing. I didn't have time for those extraneous thoughts about what might happen to me. And that's the way it was. You had to follow your leader and stay with him and protect him. And at 18, 19 years old, you didn't think about what's going to happen to you. You knew you were invincible, and you'd come back.
Okay, so that's
that's right. See.
Okay.
And that's the way I felt all along. See, because I got out and went back into service, and I flew in B-29s over the Korean War. And then later I flew a gunship in Vietnam in 1970. See.
Wow, okay.
So I had a full career, and I never had any misgivings about going on a mission. I always thought that someone was looking out over me.
Okay. And, now, in addition to that, and being, it sounds like you were very spiritual. No, and I'm asking, was that part of your training as well to put you in the mindset?
No, that wasn't part of my training. Growing up, my parents made sure I went to church. I grew up in church, and during the military, I didn't go to church so much because you didn't have a Episcopal church in the service. Okay. You had a central church. But I still had those feelings of, I would say so often, if you had a tough position, instant prayer. You don't hear much of that, but
well, you know that works. I mean, I don't have to tell you because you know that works.
It works. It
Yeah,
works. Whatever
right.
works, use it. See?
Right.
And that's it. See?
Okay.
So,
Now, for yourself and that experience of being part of that, give me two things that is in your heart that you've taken away from that whole experience and what you just talked about, is being part of the history, being part of the Tuskegee Airmen.
well, one of the main things I took away from being part of the Tuskegee Airmen was camaraderie. You depend on someone you're flying with, and you trust that person. You learn to trust that person, and that's it. I developed lifelong friends at Tuskegee, my roommates and whatnot.
Okay.
And whenever you're around them, you feel close to them, as close as any family member.
Okay.
And that's it, the closeness, camaraderie,
Okay.
depending on each other, knowing that you can depend on the other ones.
Okay.
And that's it. You develop the teamwork. Teamwork is a key to all of that.
Okay. The other thing, I've had uncles that retired in the Army, and my uncle he actually retired as a full-fledged colonel. Okay. He cannot watch a war movie. He was over in Vietnam. Blah blah. Give me two of your favorite war movies.
Two of the favorite war movies.
Yeah,
Oh,
give me-
geez, there's so many of them now.
Right.
Well, you say John Wayne has some war movies.
Uh-huh.
What was named In Harm's Way. I like that.
Okay.
That was a movie. But I don't remember any others. There have been so many. Some good
Right.
war movies. 12 O'Clock High was a good war movie.
Okay.
I love that.
Okay.
It shows the stresses that could happen in combat. Not only to the men fighting, but even commanders have problems. So
Okay.
it's, and so that's what that movie shows. So.
The other thing too is that I've asked the different gentlemen as part of the Tuskegee Airmen, what did they think of the movie Red Tails? I've gotten mixed reviews. What did you think of the movie?
Well, that's Hollywood.
Right.
Say,
Okay.
they have to do that. And of course, as Leo Gray said, I like the way he put it, is that this pilot flying over this village and sees a woman waving from a rooftop. He's able to land miles away and get a Jeep and drive right up to the house. That's before GPS. That's really carrying it a bit far.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
But you saying that's Hollywood?
Yeah, and I still differ a little with the fact that they had this leader who had a drinking problem, and I don't think he could have gotten away with that under Colonel Davis.
Okay.
I don't recall anything like that.
Okay.
And for him to last the way he did with a continuing drinking problem, something would have happened before it happened on the screen, you know. And that guy got killed before he stopped drinking, that type of thing. Say, but I don't think that could have existed. But that's Hollywood, you know. They had to have some kind of story.
Well,
But the action scenes were great.
all right. Yeah. Now, you know that we appreciate you and all that you have done for this country, and the difference that you've made, and the history. One of the things I work a lot with our youth. What message, and this will be my last question, what message would you give our youth today that's running into the obstacles of saying, I can't do it, I want to give up, or what is it that you would tell them to try to keep them encouraged, or what advice would you give to our youth today?
Well, I talk to youth quite a bit, and the thing I try to stress is education. When you think back over my lifetime, education was key. The guys who went to Tuskegee all did well in school, and they were able to absorb the learning we got. The first 10 weeks in flying training was just classroom work. You had to absorb things, engines, navigation, all that sort of stuff they throw in there. So then the next 10 weeks, you had 4 periods of 10 weeks, about 10 weeks each. The first 10 weeks, classroom, morning and afternoon. The second 10 weeks, third and fourth 10 weeks, you flew half the day and had classroom the other half. So classroom meant a lot. And so you got to be able to learn, concentrate on what you're doing.
Okay.
And when you're given an assignment out of class, you've got to be ready to come back tomorrow with the answers, say. So you've got to apply yourself.
Right.
And education is a key.
Okay.
And I always tell kids, if you're not sure what you want to do, go into service. A good career. I went into the service as a high school graduate. I got out for a year and a half. Went to college for a year, went back in the service. But I knew what I wanted to do. I still wanted to get an engineering degree. And in the service, I got 2 engineering degrees in the service. Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and a Master of Science in Systems Engineering in the service. And I was able to advance and get good jobs of that thing. And but when I look back over my career, I say, what is the number one thing? And I look at race was the number one thing. You know, in World War II, we were rigidly segregated. And one of the things in World War II, one of the keys, they never put a colored person over a white person.
Right.
And I was able to go in World War II and that atmosphere. I was there at integration. My first assignment out of integration was Korean War. I went through that, had problems there. But then in the Korean War, in the Vietnam War, I went there also as a lieutenant colonel. And I was a commander of a combat detachment in Udon, Thailand, and then Da Nang. And I was colored, and all the officers under me, pilots and navigators, were white. So I could see that change in that system, racial situation during my lifetime. And to me, that's a big step forward.
A lot of our young people don't know our history and what you had to endure, even if it was like the Jackie Robinson story or something like that. Because in reality, it was kind of like the same thing. But what inspired you to keep battling or crossing those hurdles the way that you did to become as successful as you are?
Well, I saw something I wanted and I figured I could get it. And I just kept going until I got it. So perseverance.
There you go.
Decide what you want to do and keep after it. And try not to take no for an answer. Do the best you can. There's some real obstacles, but we're able to overcome them.
What do you think that spirit came from?
I don't know. It's maybe from my father somehow, but he always inspired me. And it's one of those things. I love to talk to him. And I will say this, that when you talk about accolades and things like that, I don't need much of that anymore. For many years I didn't say much about what I did. When I came back from overseas in World War II in 1945, I walked in to see my father had several air medals on. And when he walked up and put his arms around me and told me how proud he was of me, that's all I ever needed. Just his acknowledgement that he was proud of me. And I love that.
There's a saying of living with no regrets. When you look back, is there anything that you would have done?
Oh yeah, there are regrets. I don't want to talk about those. There are many regrets. You always have some regrets. You know? But there are too many that just
Okay. Well, thank you for your
time. But the thing
is,
is, I always felt someone was looking out over me. And so I was ready to step into anything, you know.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.